All right, so some other reasons that you might be here today is that you practice and practice to say the hard thing, but then you chicken out at the end. So raise your hand or give me an emoji if that's ever happened to you. Yes, I see a few hands. And if you're worried that you're not going to be an effective leader because you're really conflict averse, this class is really going to help you today. So we're going to start with a poll. I am going to share my screen and change to presenter view. All right, can you see that in full screen? Give me a thumbs up if you can see that. Fantastic. All right, so poll. How do you feel about difficult conversations? 10 being rock solid and 1 being shaky ground. Put it in the chat. All right, so 2, 4. Anybody else want to share where you're at the present moment in terms of your comfort with difficult conversations? 3, 5. Okay, I am so glad that you are here today. Here's what I am going to cover. So I'm going to share 4 mistakes that derail difficult conversations and why these mistakes bring up so much self-doubt. I'm going to share the 5 skills in the difficult conversation system. And you are going to leave knowing why these skills are going to increase trust and build better relationships with your clients and team. And again, I love it when you interact in the chat. And if you have questions, you can put them into the chat or ask them at the end. And to tell you a little bit about me, so I am Madeline. I'm a certified communication coach, and I have helped hundreds of professionals just like you overcome your fears of speaking up at work, overcome your fears of using your voice and solving conflicts. And before I started my business, I designed and built window displays, experiential marketing events, and retail environments for multinational brands like Coach and Armani Exchange and Diesel. And what I learned from that experience was how to get a message across in seconds. I started as a designer, and then I switched over to project and account management. And so that meant I was the person, the go-between with the creative team and the clients. So if we had to deliver bad news to a client, that was my job. And if we had to give creative feedback or constructive feedback to the creative team, that was also my job. So I have a lot of experience navigating tricky conversations, and I've also been in your shoes. Communication was once my biggest struggle. So I was terrified of public speaking. I avoided conflict like the plague, and it really became a problem as I moved up in my career. And so getting on the other side of that fear really was the single most liberating experience of my adult life. And that's why I'm so passionate about teaching other people these skills. So I would love to hear from a few people. What is one thing that you are really hoping to learn today? Just drop that into the chat. All right, so let's jump. Oh, talking about money. Fantastic. Adapting to different personalities as a very vibrant, let me see, the chat's going fast. Vibrant person doesn't always resonate. Yes, I'm going to share skills, Nancy, that can be used no matter who you're talking to in any setting with different personalities. Let's see, what else? How to be more confident with difficult interactions when I want to express my point of view, when others disagree. Absolutely. That is, I'm going to, all 5 of the skills that I'm sharing today are going to help, but there's one in particular that really applies to that. So I'm so glad that you are here, and let's jump in to the 4 mistakes. Well, I see, so someone added that they also want to be a better communicator, how to best confront someone when you need to, being more confident to speak up in larger meetings. Yes, these skills are going to help confront people. They're going to help build consensus and really increase your confidence in navigating presentations and also the questions that come up in presentations. And let's see, Nancy says that you shy away from bullies and don't know how to hold your ground. All right, yes, today is going to help. So let's jump into the 4 mistakes that can really send conversations off the rails. And I'm going to stop sharing just so that I can see the group for this part. So mistake number 1 is that you avoid conversations. So give me a hand if you've ever been avoiding a difficult conversation. I'm going to raise both my hands because I've definitely done this. You know, if you could see my feet, I'd raise those too. So avoiding conversations doesn't help you and it doesn't help the other person. We don't solve anything when we are avoiding conversations. And we might spend, 10 hours thinking about a conversation that might actually only take 10 minutes. And all of that brain space and time that we're using in those 10 hours could just, be devoted to solving the problem in a fraction of the time. So know that if you are avoiding conversation, it is just extending your pain, and you're not going to get better at handling these conflicts because you're not getting any practice. So that's mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 is that you get defensive in difficult conversations. I see this come up a lot in presentations where my clients are giving a presentation they've prepared for, and then someone asks a question, and it just completely throws them off. Instead of being able to hear them out and consider that question, they just they get ready for battle, right? Like you brace for the worst. You raise your voice, you tell them why your idea is the best and only one. And you spend a lot of time trying to convince them that they're wrong. And when people don't feel heard, what happens is they generally just ask more and more questions. So they keep bringing up concerns, and then you're just playing whack-a-mole with questions. And so everyone gets really defensive, the conflict level just rises, and you don't really get anywhere. So that's mistake number 2. And mistake number 3 is that you shut down. So imagine that you're in this same meeting, you're giving a presentation, and when someone, maybe your boss, maybe the CEO, brings up a concern, you just shut down. You go quiet, you give up. This used to be me, right? Like you assume that the meeting is over, you have left the building, even if you're still sitting in the room. And what happens when you shut down is that your work gets overlooked. You feel powerless and resigned because you don't think you have the ability to affect change. And so the way one of my clients described this is that you're giving up any of the influence that you do have. And when you feel resigned, you can also get into this rut where you think this happens every time. And if you think you know the outcome before the conversation even starts, like why even bother to start? So that's mistake number 3. And mistake number 4 is that you justify or over-explain. So if there are any over talkers in the group, give me a heart or raise your hand. So over explaining is, again, just like a natural nervous response, but it tends to make people angry because it's usually just a long and windy way of invalidating other people's feelings and telling them why they're wrong. So it's something that you do because you're trying to overcompensate for feeling nervous, and it makes other people feel worse. And, the other thing that happens when you're talking and over explaining is that you are missing the important cues and questions that you need to answer in order to move the conversation forward. So those are the 4 mistakes that come up in difficult conversations. And the reason that they keep happening, that you're stuck repeating the same patterns again and again, is that most people expect others to respond really negatively to feedback. So you overestimate the negative impact of approaching a conflict and, addressing this difficult situation. And because of that, you plan for the worst or you avoid it, and you think you know the outcome before you even start the conversation. And what this creates is a ton of pent up frustration because there's so much energy stuck in unmade decisions and unhad conversations. And so problems compound, and you live in this perpetual fear of conflict, and you let resentment build up toward your colleagues or toward your clients. And it can have a hugely negative impact on relationships and trust with the people that you're working with. So here's what you need to do in order to resolve conflicts with ease. I'm just going to take a sip of water while I project again. So these are the 5 skills in the difficult conversation system: clarity, curiosity, listening, empathy, and calm. So we're going to talk about them one by one and why they're important. The first step, whenever you have to have a conversation with someone, is to get clear on what you want them to take away from the conversation. Because if it's not clear to you, it's not clear to anyone else. So what happens for a lot of people, and I'm thinking of a client, someone, she was VP of merchandising at a big retail company, and we were preparing for her to deliver performance reviews to her team. And she had one person in particular that she had to give a lot of constructive feedback to. And what happens in performance reviews, I've seen this with so many managers, is that because there's so much pent up frustration, that the message can come across in a way that they don't intend. Because the same piece of feedback can sound like, this is your final warning, and I need you to shape up if you want to stay here. Or it can sound like, I'd really like to be able to promote you, and these are the 3 things that you need to improve on in order to do that. So getting clear on your message ahead of time is the first step and really important in improving the quality of the conversations that you're going to have with other people. And it's also going to reduce your anxiety when you know what you want to say and have a plan to say. So step number 2 in the system is curiosity. So curiosity, it improves collaboration, it improves creativity, it helps us see different perspectives and respond less defensively, all good things when we're thinking about resolving conflicts. And one of the best ways to bring more curiosity to a difficult conversation is to ask questions. So one of my clients was really upset with a couple of people on his team because they had repeatedly sent out client reports that had mistakes in them. So his plan was to let his team know that this was totally unacceptable and that he expected more at their level. And when we discussed this, what I shared with him is that, if he approached this situation from the viewpoint of reprimanding them, that it really shut off any opportunity to actually find out what was happening and to create, or rather to correct for any problems in the workflow. And so instead, we planned how he could be more curious and ask questions of his team. And when you ask questions, then you're able to approach these difficult conversations from a more collaborative way. But just remember that not all questions are created equal. So you want to ask open-ended questions. And I'll give you an example from my personal life for anyone here who has kids. If your kid comes home from school and you ask, how was your day? And they say good or fine. And what did you learn at school today? The answer is usually nothing. So if you're not asking the right type of question, you still might not get the information that is going to help you solve problems. So step number 1 was clarity. Step number 2 is curiosity. And step number 3 is listening. And I want to do another poll here. Oops, whoops, have these in the wrong order. So here's the poll. How do you rate your listening skills on a scale of 1 to 10? Tell us in the chat if your ears are your best feature or if you love the sound of your own voice. All right, 5, 7, 8, 8. Amazing. We have some really good listeners, work in progress. Appreciate your honesty. Yeah, so it's good to know where you're at on the scale, because if you recognize that this is an area that you could grow, then you just know where to spend your time. So listening is really 50% of communication, but I think it gets treated more like a long lost cousin. And it's easy to get distracted when we're listening. And I teach a concept to all of my clients called listening with all your senses, which helps you tune out all of the distractions and turn listening into a full body activity. Because if you look at any good negotiator or strong salesperson or trusted leader or excellent team collaborator, what all of those people have in common is that they are really good listeners. And so some tips for listening is that if you are tensing up, if you're squinting, if you're scrunching your brow like this, those are all signs that you're in your skeptical brain. And so you may not really be listening with curiosity, which is why I love this quote from Stephen Covey, that most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. So remember that if you are typing, if you're going through your to-do list, if you're looking at your phone, you are not really listening, and your team can tell. So I had a freelance job for only a few months where every one-on-one meeting I had with my boss, I was standing behind his desk watching him file his email. And I found this hugely distracting. And every once in a while, I would stop talking to see whether he was paying attention. And he'd always reply, he'd say, I'm listening. But I never really felt like he was truly listening or heard my concerns. So how you listen really matters. And now let's talk about skill number 4, which is empathy. And so for whoever put in the chat that they really want to know how to handle difficult conversations when you don't agree with people, this is it. So empathy often gets confused with agreeing, but it is different. You can acknowledge someone's reality without agreeing with them. And there's something called tactical empathy. It's a skill used by the FBI. I first learned about it in one of my favorite books, Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. And when you are using empathy as a tactic, you don't argue with people, no matter how much you disagree or dislike their opinion or their perspective. Instead, you allow them to have their opinion and you validate their opinion. So this can sound like it makes sense that you think this if X, Y, and Z happened. And it makes sense that you're feeling frustrated right now when the project is running late. So instead of telling someone, oh, you shouldn't be upset that the project isn't late, it's not my fault because, I have too many projects on my plate, you validate how they are feeling in the moment and you don't try to tell them why they're wrong. And so this is a really helpful skill in high conflict situations because, again, it de-escalates. When you give someone permission to feel the way they feel, it takes all the wind out of the sails in the argument. And I've been working with a client at a big tech firm. And so she's a product manager and she was having trouble building relationships with senior leaders. And what she discovered was that she was coming across as really defensive in meetings. So she was discouraged by the general adversarial attitude that she saw of the leaders and that she really perceived as being necessary to get ahead at the company. But when we discovered that she too was being defensive in meetings, what we did is really strengthen her skills in being able to create consensus and take the just reframe what was happening in meetings so that she could be more self-aware and offer empathy to other people's concerns, to her colleagues' concerns, instead of trying to shut them down in meetings. And when she did that, she got like a new project greenlit, and she's now leading a cross collaboration of 30 team members and working on this really important initiative that has the potential to increase customer acquisition across the global business. So using empathy can really change the entire tone and trajectory of meetings. So let's now talk about skill number, actually, I want to share one more thing about empathy. So this is the dictionary definition of empathy: the ability to understand another person's thoughts and feelings in a situation from their point of view rather than your own. And the way I think of it as listening from another person's perspective instead of to their perspective. So really putting yourself and imagining yourself in their shoes and listening from that perspective. So that's a way to think about empathy. And now let's talk about the last skill number 5, which is calm. And the reason it's important to be calm is when our stress levels are triggered when we are, in states of really high emotion, our logic goes down. So it's really hard to make decisions. It's really hard to speak in a way that other people understand or even get any words out of our mouth when we're in a stress response, because the natural thing to do as humans is to fight, flight, or fawn. So, you're getting defensive, you're shutting down, or you're trying to please people. And so you want to be able to calm your nervous system, because when you're calm, it gives you more presence in a group, because you are able to stay present in your body, be present in the moment, and really, pay attention and be able to respond thoughtfully to what's happening instead of arguing with people. And again, this increases your creativity, your logical thinking, and your problem-solving skills, which increases your influence over situations. So the result of using these 5 skills in the difficult conversation system is that you're going to stop harboring resentment. You're going to stop avoiding conflicts and be able to start building consensus instead, being able to really get people on board with your ideas, feel more agency and influence, and that builds trust with your clients and teams. And so while you might think you need the perfect time, the perfectly planned bullet points, the perfect script to have a difficult conversation, what you actually need is presence, curiosity, and the willingness to be uncomfortable, to experience temporary discomfort in order to get that long-term gain of clearing up conflicts and resolving problems. So to recap, when you have to give constructive feedback, when you're negotiating around money, when you're delivering bad news to a client or trying to solve conflicts with people on your team, you want to use the 5 skills in the difficult conversation system: clarity, curiosity, listening, empathy, and calm. And I see there is a question in the chat. So what are good practices to increase focus and calm your presence? Great question. So think about grounding techniques. And different techniques work better for different people. A couple of things that I like to do, because you can do them quickly and they're easy for most people to do, is to plant your feet on the floor. A lot of times when we're nervous, we cross our legs. You might fidget and cross them back and forth. We tend to close in our posture. So when we plant both feet on the floor, really make that connection of feeling our the ground underneath our feet. That's a good way to really just get present in your body. And then I teach a variety of breathing techniques and cognitive techniques to help people calm their nervous system. And one that we can do right now all together is we're going to count down backwards from 5. So you can do it on mute, but we're just gonna count down. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then we're going to do it again. And this time, as we count, I want you to touch your thumb to your forefinger, and then your next finger, your next finger, your next finger, and back. All right? So we're going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. and notice if you feel calmer after doing that. So this is a really quick technique to calm the nervous system because it switches the part of the brain that you're using. It moves you out of your stress response, which is back here, and into your prefrontal cortex. You can't count backwards without stopping to think about it. So it stops those spinning thought patterns that really kind of tend to wind you up. And when you tap into any of the senses, it helps you calm down, which, again, is why I also teach listening with all of your senses, because it's a way to tap into your body and be more grounded when you're listening. So to recap, the 5 skills are clarity, curiosity, listening, empathy, and calm. And when you use these skills, it's going to build trust with your team. It's going to build trust in yourself, because you're going to feel more confident in your ability to handle difficult conversations. So that's what I wanted to teach you today. And I can't wait for you to use these skills to show up more confidently in your next difficult conversation. Because once you have a system, you can apply it to a variety of different situations, such as a project being late, or your work being over budget, or when a client is mad. And using these skills increases your empathy, and it really builds your self-awareness. But there's a difference between knowing the skills and being able to integrate them into your everyday workflow. And a lot of my clients have deeply ingrained fears around speaking up and addressing conflict. And if that's you, if you are here, like sitting here thinking, all right, Madeline, these skills sound great, but there's no way that I'm going to be able to use them because I would just be too nervous or anxious. That is something that I can help you with in coaching. So when I work with clients one-on-one, we spend 4 months together implementing these skills and really building your confidence and strategizing for difficult conversations. So if you have to ask for a raise or a promotion, or when you're giving performance reviews, or if management doesn't like one of your creative ideas and you really want to advocate for your ideas and be able to get past their concerns, these are all things that I can help with more one-on-one guidance and strategy to guide you, so you don't have to go through all of those situations alone. So if that sounds like something that you'd like help with, I encourage you to book a discovery call with me. We will spend an hour talking through your goals and the roadblocks you have, your biggest fears around communication. And we'll spend 60 minutes mapping out a plan for the skills and the mindset that you need to improve your communication and move forward with your career. So book a discovery call with me. By the time you get off this call, there will be an email in your inbox with a link to do that. And you're going to leave that call feeling so relieved, knowing that there's a simple solution and that it's not going to take a long time to build these skills. And the best thing about investing in your communication skills is that you get to keep those skills and use them for the rest of your career. So I was working with a client. She's a scientist at a pharma company. And so she does research and she has to present a lot at medical forums. And she just has this crippling fear of answering questions in these forums, because she registered every question as a personal attack on her expertise. And this led to a lot of self-doubt, and she'd overcompensate by over-preparing. And when we worked together and calmed her nervous system and quieted that self-doubt, she was able to tap into her curiosity. And suddenly the questions didn't feel like interrogations, but they instead were opportunities for collaboration. And this gave her more presence. She was able to answer questions without shutting down. And she was able to discuss people's concerns without spending all of this time anxiously thinking about her response. And so this changed the entire experience of presenting her data. And it really allowed her to work with her colleagues and teammates on, making sure they were working, exploring the concerns and working toward the best outcome for patients. So again, I encourage you to book a discovery call if you would like to explore coaching. And so before we jump into audience questions, I just want to take a minute and address a few of the reasons that you might think this sounds like exactly what you need, but still be hesitant to book a call. So one is that you're worried that it might take years to fix everything that you want to change about communication, but building your communication skills doesn't take a lot of time. It just takes practice and making a decision to start. And when I work with people one-on-one, we spend 4 months together. And in that time, you get to implement the skills, you get to evaluate how it works, and we get to make adjustments so that you really build your own toolkit that feels most authentic to you. And one of my clients who just had so much pent-up frustration from avoiding difficult conversations at work, she shared that at the beginning, she was probably spending like 3 to 5 hours a day ruminating on situations, but not resolving them. And when she stopped avoiding those conversations and started having them, she was able to see her own influence at work. She joined a board, she got promoted, and that shattered her own glass ceiling. And so it doesn't take a lot of time. It again just takes a willingness to start. And the second reason that you might be hesitant to book a call is that you're not sure if now's the right time, or that if you have enough time to devote to coaching. And I think of that expression around meditating. Wonder if we have any meditators here. Yeah, okay. That you should spend 20 minutes a day meditating unless you're too busy, and then you should spend an hour. So there's always going to be a reason to wait, but decisions don't get easier with time. And whatever problem you're trying to solve for, it's going to be on the other side of the school year, your vacation, your work deadline. So the sooner you address this, the sooner you get the skills that you need, the sooner you can solve problems and really free up your time and energy for the things that you actually like to do. And the third reason that sometimes people are hesitant to explore coaching is that they're afraid that it won't work. And here's what I want to share. If you invest in coaching and you never show up for a single session and you never open any of the tools or try out any of the techniques that I share with you, you might not be happy with your results. But if you implement just 1 or 2 of them, here's what's going to change. You're going to be more clear in meetings. You're going to spend less of your time beating yourself up for things that you didn't say or you wished you'd said differently. And you're going to feel more confident and you're going to be proud of yourself for actually having the courage to resolve conflicts and be able to lead. So those are things that coaching can help with. So grab a time for a discovery call from the link in your email. And now I'd love to answer any questions from the audience.